can see what is happening. And why today's topic is very important, especially in the country of my birth, Nigeria. By 2030, Nigeria will have the youngest, most populous youth population in the whole world. And the increase of drug addiction and depression among these young adults is at an epidemic rate. And that's why today's topic is very important. How do we counter this? How do we deal with this increase? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, viewers from different parts of the world. You are welcome to today's podcast. Today we are looking at a very important mental health problem within the African youth. Our focus today is on existential depression among African youth. My name is Professor Oluwafemi. I'm a professor of biblical psychology at the Faculty of Biblical Psychology at London University. My approach to existential depression among African youth is going to be based on two major religions that we have in Africa. Number one, me coming from the Yoruba tribe, I'll be looking at Yoruba's Ifa psychology approach to existential depression, and also I'll be looking at biblical psychology approach to existential depression among African youth, so that we can have a balanced view in this integrated therapeutic approach. That's our goal. Our goal is to explore the integrated therapeutic approach from our indigenous Ifa psychology and also biblical psychology to deal with the meanings of existential depression among African youth. Let's have a definition. What is existential depression? A person with existential depression may experience an ongoing feeling of hopelessness, a struggle to find meaning in life. These symptoms can disrupt a person's life and leave them feeling isolated. A person with existential depression may feel depressed for many reasons, and their symptoms can be similar to those other types of depression. However, as existential depression is not a clinically recognized diagnosis, a doctor will likely diagnose them with clinical depression. One of the major problems with this depression is the lack of diagnosis from the clinical medical approach. It is obvious that existential depression cannot be clinically diagnosed, recognized, but it has its symptoms. Let's go further to look at those. What are the features? All types of depression have triggers that further examination can uncover. However, existential depression may develop when a person frequently contemplates life and reflects on things that produce a profound sense of hopelessness or unhappiness. That's a key word. When individuals begin to reflect on things that lead to a profound sense of hopelessness or unhappiness within their socio-cultural context and their environment. Also, when an individual considers questions about life and existence that have no answers, such as what is the meaning of life itself? Why do people suffer? What happens to men after death? And they may have difficulty finding the meaning and searching for a reason in this injustice, pain, and unhappiness around their environment or in their nations, where none of this answer is forthcoming, and an individual can go through a period of existential crisis. Now, in Africa, which is our focus, with specific attention on our youth, which is becoming an epidemic today, the increase of existential depression among African youth is a very worrisome rate. It is said that existential depression, which is a state of an intense despair, hopelessness, and questioning of life's purpose, is a significant growing concern in Africa today, particularly among the youth and in regions facing intense socio-economic instability and climate-related crises. It is often tied to stuckedness or existential immobility, where young people feel unable to move forward in life. due to economic barriers, even while facing pressure to succeed. So you can see here that the environmental factor, the socio-economic factor of our young adults in Africa is a major contributing factor because these kids, these young adults, they feel stuck. They are experiencing existential immobility. They cannot move forward. They can't see anything way forward in their life, and they begin to question life. And this results in the use of substance, and they are killing themselves gradually by abusing their body, by taking substance abuse. These, the menace of drug addiction in African youth is a reflection of existential crisis and existential depression. Going further, we now see that energy poverty as an existential crisis. A major driver is a lack of reliable electricity, which blocks modernization, and for 600 million people among African youth, it prevents development. This creates a demographic crisis for the continent's large young workforce, which faces high unemployment, energy poverty, the lack of electricity. You can see if this is solved, how this can result into solving our existential crisis among our youth in Africa. Climate change vulnerability, also a major factor. The rapid impact of climate change, droughts, floods, and unpredictable weather threatens livelihood, specifically for farmers and pastoralists, leading to severe mental health struggles, trauma, and suicide in Africa. Contextual drivers. Research indicates that the feeling of being trapped without opportunities is driving a rise in mental health issues as traditional systems struggle to adapt to modern economic pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, to our policymakers in Africa and people that are interested in development of African youth, you can see what is happening. And why today's topic is very important, especially in the country of my birth, Nigeria. By 2030, Nigeria will have the youngest, most populous youth population in the whole world. It is estimated that by 2030, that is in the next 4 years, Nigeria is going to have close to 100 million young adults. This is serious. This is serious. And the increase of drug addiction and depression among these young adults is at an epidemic rate. And that's why today's topic is very important. How do we counter this? How do we deal with the increase of existential depression among our youth? Key aspect of existential depression and crisis in Africa. Mental health infrastructure. While mental health conditions are rising, support infrastructure remains minimal, with 24% of African countries having no stand-alone national mental health policy. That's why we are addressing this, and we are looking forward to work with policymakers in mental health in Africa countries to address the increase and the rise of existential depression among our African youths. Cultural context. In some regions, such as South Africa, the concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are, is being utilized to combat existential anxiety by focusing on collective meaning rather than just individual despair. Let's look at some regional findings in Africa. In Malawi, a 2024 survey showed that Malawians participating in a study reported the highest prevalence of severe depression, anxiety, and stress compared to Ghana, Mozambique, and Nigeria. About Nigeria, report indicate that high level of severe mental health condition is on the increase among Nigerian youth. South Africa, high levels of anxiety, depression, and substance abuse, often tied to economic instability, load shedding, and crime, affect roughly 1 in 6 people, young people in South Africa. Conflict zones in the area like South Sudan, DRC, Burundi, mental disturbance is often linked to the traumatic loss of livelihood, property, and loved ones. While the prevalence of depression in some sub-Saharan Africa countries, approximately 10 to 20%, is considered comparable to high-income countries, the vast majority of these cases go untreated, often becoming more severe. Ladies and gentlemen, it is high time for us in Africa continent to face this issue and to provide solutions, both locally and also modern day approach. When we look at existential crisis and existential depression. There are four questions that that form the component of an individual experiencing it. Number one, death. Now the individual might consider death inavailability and what comes after death. Meaninglessness. A person may wonder, what is the point of my life when there is existential immobility due to lack of opportunity, economic depression is there, social economic factor, cultural factor, unemployment. The person look at life. This young adult, they look at life as being meaningless. Isolation. Feeling of isolation may result from a lack of connection with others and a breakdown of important relationship. Also, socio-economic factor, lack of opportunity also contribute to this. Then the question of freedom. The person may ponder the overwhelming multitude of choices and consequences in life, and they will ask themselves this question.